Although I don't think masks make any difference. I really don't. I know that some people like to put them on. It makes you feel a little bit better. So, do it again tomorrow. Today on my free little bit extra podcast, Scarlett Moffat buys food for old people in the area. Well, all of them. That's an awful lot of Warburton's pockets. Celebrity Juice has been postponed. A silver lining at last. Susanna Reid is self-isolating, most definitely just to get a break from peers. You can download from the LBC app, the Global Player, or wherever else you get your podcasts. As well as listening live to LBC, you can listen back to this and other LBC programmes on the LBC app, as well as listening to a range of podcasts. Steve, my local Tesco allowed 5 packs of pasta per customer. Who needs that many, says Margaret. I think people are just panicking. Just panicking. And also, Steve, warn your elderly listeners, nobody comes knocking on the door to try and test you. It's people who might be looking to be robbing you. I'll be back tomorrow morning. Take good care of yourselves. Just remember, wash hands regularly. Coming up at 10 o'clock this morning, it's James O'Brien. But next with Breakfast on LBC, it's Nick Ferrari.
At 7 o'clock on Wednesday, March the 18th, the message was clear from the Prime Minister.
We have the resolve and the resources to win the fight.
We've never faced an economic fight like this one, but we are well prepared. We will get through this, and we will do whatever it takes.
And £350 billion to back up those promises. Just how bad could it get? Sir Patrick Vallance, the Chief Scientific Advisor.
If we can get this down to numbers 20,000 and below, that's a good outcome in terms of where we would hope to get to with this outbreak.
But there is good news. Cases in Italy rose, but at the slowest rate since February, so it's slowing down there. All those stories and more after the news.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 7 o'clock, the Prime Minister will face questions in the Commons later on whether the government's emergency funding during the coronavirus outbreak is enough. So far, £350 billion worth of loans and other aid to support businesses and households has been announced. Boris Johnson's insisted the UK will recover.
Be in no doubt that one day the UK economy is going to bounce back. And those companies, good, brilliant British companies, will bounce back. And that's why we're taking the steps to protect them.
The package revealed by the Chancellor yesterday included holidays for business rates and mortgage payments. But there's been criticism of a lack of support for renters and gig economy workers. Amy works at a laser tag venue in Leeds.
If our company chooses to close themselves, then we won't get sick pay. There's a few of us that work here full time, me being one of them, and we won't be able to afford rent if we had to not work for a few weeks.
The government's chief scientific advisor says it's estimated up to 55,000 people in the UK have now been infected by COVID-19. 71 people have died after testing positive. The NHS in England has cancelled all non-emergency surgery from the middle of April. Jack Metcalf from Preston has been waiting to have an operation after a serious car crash 2 years ago.
It's hard because I've been waiting for this operation for the 14 months. It's been a long time, and my surgeon said that I was next on her list to be operated on, and unfortunately she's had to cancel it.
Several supermarkets have announced further plans to help the elderly and vulnerable people during the coronavirus crisis. More from LBC's correspondent Rachel Venables.
The government and stores have said repeatedly there's no need to stockpile, but for weeks people have been doing it anyway, and now some shops are taking action. Tesco's is no longer opening for 24 hours, instead from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m, and it's limiting the number of certain goods each person can buy, while Sainsbury's will only allow the vulnerable and elderly into their store for the first hour of trading tomorrow.
Elsewhere, pubs and restaurants will be allowed to turn into takeaways to help provide food for people in self-isolation. And Coronation Street has banned kissing scenes to help prevent the spread of coronavirus. Stay with LBC for continued coverage of the COVID-19 pandemic. The LBC Markets report the FTSE 100 will reopen at 52.94 after closing up 143 points or 2.7% yesterday, and the pound buys $1.21 and €1.09. LBC weather: cloud and rain over parts of northern England, Wales and the Midlands will move southwards. Colder, brighter conditions with showers following, a high of 14 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Simon Conway.
If you own a pair of Skechers, this ad is not for you. This ad is for those who never tried Skechers, for the few who've never experienced the otherworldly comfort of Skechers air-cooled memory foam, never floated across the ground on comfort pods, or experienced Skechers seamless knits. You're missing out. That's like never petting a puppy. So we've made this ad for you in hopes of showing you the light. Skechers. Live comfortably. Available at Skechers stores or online at Skechers.com or wherever stylish shoes are sold.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
Morning to you, 3 minutes after 7 on Wednesday, March the 18th. A health check for all Britons, £350 billion, as the government vows time after time they are getting ready to do whatever it takes. We'll give you full details on that. All the other aspects to be covered as well, not least if you are being forced to work at home with someone perhaps that you don't necessarily get on that well with, that is your husband or your wife suddenly moves in. What are the tips to keeping your relationship alive? We'll give you full details of that. What about the insurance cover? And how do you claim if you think you're entitled to one of these grants that the government talked about yesterday? And there is good news. There is good news. Cases in Italy rose, but at the slowest rate since February the 21st. In China, those 2 emergency hospitals in Wuhan have now been closed, so we can get through this. In other news, the brother of the Manchester Arena bomber, guilty of 22 counts of murder, and former Scottish First Minister Alex Salmond tells the court the sex assault claims against him, which he denies, are deliberate fabrications.
Alex Salmond takes the witness stand to give evidence at his sexual offences trial. I'm LBC's Corey Martin with the latest.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Call 0345 60 60 973. Text 84850. Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
Pleased to say that I am back in the studio. Apologies for yesterday. We quite rightly trialled how it would be working from home, and if you were listening, you know, it did not work, but measures will be taken and we will make that right. Let's look at the news from yesterday then. Extraordinary amount of money. Is it enough? Or, and of course, is it affecting the right people? Already suggestions being made, but what about those who live in the rented sector? We'll look at that in more detail. Let's take us through exactly what we heard yesterday. LBC's Matthew Thompson. Matthew.
It was another day of high drama, Nick, from start to finish. First of all, the government's chief scientific advisor, Sir Patrick Vallance, was giving evidence in front of the Commons Health Select Committee. And his assessment of what would constitute a good result from this crisis was frankly rather chilling.
Every year in seasonal flu, the number of deaths is thought to be about 8,000 excess deaths. So if we can get this down to numbers 20,000 and below, that's a good outcome in terms of where we would hope to get to with this outbreak. But I mean, it's still horrible. I mean, that's still an enormous number of deaths, and it's an enormous pressure on the health service. And having spent 20 years as an NHS consultant as well as an academic, you know, I know exactly what that looks and feels like.
The best case scenario means 20,000 people will still die of this coronavirus. It's no wonder that Boris Johnson yesterday compared the situation that this country faces to a war.
We must act like any wartime government and do whatever it takes to support our economy. We must support millions of businesses and tens of millions of families and individuals through the coming months.
And if it is a war that we're in, Nick, well, then the Chancellor Rishi Sunak yesterday fired an economic bazooka.
Today, I am making available an initial £330 billion of guarantees, equivalent to 15% of our GDP. That means any business who needs access to cash to pay their rent, their salaries, suppliers, or purchase stock will be able to access a government-backed loan or credit on attractive terms. And if demand is greater than the initial £330 billion I'm making available today, I will go further and provide as much capacity as required.
And as well as those loans, Nick, there will be help for small businesses who've got no insurance, and no business in the hospitality, leisure or retail sector will pay business rates for an entire year. And crucially, Nick, the Chancellor promised, you heard him there, if this package doesn't go far enough, he would go further. We know that Dominic Cummings, the Prime Minister's advisor, is fond of three-word slogans, like, for example, take back control. The government's new tagline, Nick, whatever it takes. And there was support too yesterday for homeowners.
I can announce that for those in difficulty due to coronavirus, mortgage lenders will now offer a 3-month mortgage holiday so that people will not have to pay a penny towards their mortgage costs while they get back.